Hey there, and thanks for tuning into episode 125 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. My name is Greg Lindberg. Here on this episode, we have two guests joining us from a startup company based in the Seattle, Washington area. And this company has developed a super cool piece of technology that is enabling blind and visually impaired sports fans to increase their fandom by giving them more information about what's actually happening in a basketball game, a baseball game, through this very unique device that provides haptic feedback. And I did want to mention that I had the opportunity to demo this device at the National Federation of the Blind convention held this past summer here in Florida. And I was really blown away just by how much information that this device does convey, how this device could just really take my fandom to the next level. So let's go ahead and dive into episode 125 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. Okay, so here on this episode, we have two guests from the company called OneCourt, and super excited to chat about this amazing technology that they're developing for blind sports fans here. So first, I would like to introduce Antyush Bollini, who is the COO and co-founder of OneCourt. Welcome to the podcast, Antyush.
Thanks so much, Greg. Really exciting to be here.
Absolutely. Appreciate you taking the time. And then we also have Bree Fraser, who is the program manager of business development. Bree, welcome.
Thanks, Greg. It's great to reconnect after meeting you in person a few months ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, who knew we'd be doing this? This is fun. So just wanted to give you guys a chance to kind of introduce yourselves here at the top, just kind of your professional backgrounds and then how you ended up coming to OneCourt. So we can start with Antyush.
Yeah, totally. So for context, I'm a recent graduate from the University of Washington. I graduated undergrad in 22, and then just a few months ago finished up my graduate degree, which was a MS in Technology Innovation. I started working on OneCourt my senior year, along with Jared and other team members, where this started out as something we were competing in the business plan competition with. You know, in that time, a lot of my background had been in product management, product design. And over time, I've kind of leaned more and more into a business development and partnerships focused role, which has been really complementary to my co-founders who have a lot of experience in design and hardware development and software development. So a lot of my work now is in working with different sports leagues and sports clubs, as well as other strategic partners and even investors to kind of bring OneCourt to life and find more ways to get the sports community to lean in and support our mission to bring live sports to everyone.
Nice. Appreciate you sharing that. And Bree, how about your journey?
Yeah, I joke that I'm their Canadian import to their team. So I just moved down to Seattle just less than a year ago. And so I joined the OneCourt team back in March. But prior to moving down here, I'd worked within the Canadian high performance sports system. So working with athletes that are reaching towards the Olympic stage and working behind the scenes on implementing tech and implementing high performance standards that help them perform at the highest levels. And I realized really quickly that technology can play a really critical role in the athlete perspective. And so when I moved down here and learned about OneCourt, I was actually researching different startups that had spun out of the University of Washington, being a current student myself. And I came across OneCourt and I immediately got excited. The fact that there is a team that was improving accessibility by this really novel technical solution that was really grounded in a community need and community voices. And so I had cold emailed the team and reached out and just said, hey, is there any way that I can get involved? And then here I am 6 months later with the team.
Wow, very cool. So as far as the inspiration behind, the genesis behind OneCourt, I guess we could go back to Antyush on this one if you just want to talk about kind of what inspired this idea originally, and especially being a co-founder.
Totally. So Jared, my co-founder and CEO, he came up with the concept as a junior at the University of Washington. he had seen a video that many people have seen before of a deaf-blind man at a soccer match who was with a sighted woman. And as they watched the game, the woman moved his hands around on a game board, and the game board had kind of raised lines that illustrated the shape of the soccer field. And by moving his hands around, she was able to demonstrate where all of the action was happening on the field. And it was through touch that he was able to access the game. And Jared was an industrial design student. So his first thought was, how can he kind of scale that experience, one that requires another person to be involved, to be a more independent experience through technology? So he set out to create OneCourt and the device that we are now using today to facilitate a highly intuitive and highly independent experience for fans.
Nice. Interesting. And we'll definitely dive into the actual technology here in just a second. But I'm definitely curious about the name OneCourt. Obviously, when you hear court, you probably think basketball or, in the blindness space, perhaps goalball. So Bree, can you kind of give us just a lowdown on kind of the meaning behind that name?
Yeah, we were actually reflecting on it this morning and hearing from the team, what does OneCourt mean to them? And to Jared, who came up with the name, he saw it from a product lens, which was really, the world that he was living in at the time of inception. He saw it as one device that can support all sport. You can interchange the surface, so you can be feeling a basketball game and then flip it to a football game. And he really wanted a device that could service any sport for any of those tactile opportunities. But I think as the company has evolved and as more and more people have learned about OneCourt, it really has taken on also an accessibility lens of that sport. We really believe sport is for everyone, and this device is opening doors for folks to experience sport in a new way. And for some folks, it's inviting them into sport, into a spectatorship that previously they believe wasn't for them. And so I think it's gone beyond just the product lens and really lends itself to our vision as a company is to ensure that everyone is included in sport.
Right. Interesting. I like that. Just kind of a lot of factors that went into that name, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
So then in terms of the device itself, I guess we could start with Antyush on this one. Just talk to us about the device, kind of how it was developed and how it works.
Yeah, so the journey of kind of getting to where we are now has been a fun one, especially because the device has changed a lot in that time. The very first prototype we had created was really focused on trying to prove and validate whether you could communicate spatial information through touch. So, the first prototype was essentially a line of 8 motors, and it was drawn on top of the motors with a layer of foam was the outline of a tennis court. And we mapped basically a video of a tennis point to the device, and we'd vibrate a certain motor to indicate when the ball had been served, when it had bounced on the other side of the net, and when it had been returned. And we got to test this out with Vic, who is a blind student at the University of Washington. And it was through tests like that and with a lot of other folks where we started to get a lot of signal that touch really was an intuitive entry point to a sports experience. So then we kind of set out to scale the resolution of that device from just having 8 motors. We started to build it out into more of a grid or an array. So you could start to experience the game through multiple dimensions, not just through a single line. So in that time, we kind of expanded out the device. We were able to build out prototypes and also kind of building out the software experience where we've been able to partner with different leagues to leverage their gameplay data, ball tracking data, player tracking data, and stats to create versions of our product for American football, for basketball, and for baseball. And now we're doing some exciting work with soccer.
Wow, that's amazing. And Bree, anything you'd like to add to that?
Mm-hmm. I think throughout that journey, when I was initially onboarding onto the team and looking through different prototypes, I think it's also important to remember that they were students at this time, like full-time students coming up with these different iterations and presenting them at different startup competitions at the University of Washington. So a lot of the traction, a lot of the support, was coming from a grassroots level, whether it was fans in the community or mentorship that was happening at the university level that really gave encouragement at early levels to make this happen. And so it's been about a year and a half since the team's been full-time at this. And so the exponential growth that's happened in that year and a half is pretty incredible to see from the first iteration to now.
And I'll add that it wasn't even just encouragement, it was also funding. Like the competitions we participated in, they gave us awards for the mission and the early versions of the product that we had created. So with the Dempsey Startup Competition, the very first one we competed in that I mentioned, we won $10,000 from that one. We won thousands of dollars from other competitions. And we even won a grant from Microsoft, which Microsoft had met us when we were at a stage where we were just working out of the university makerspace. And they took a leap of faith in supporting our work. So, in that time when we were students, there was always people who were kind of enabling the innovation, whether it was through that mentorship that Bree mentioned or through actual funding that allowed the team to make a transition from school project led by students to something that we were doing full-time post-grad and, essentially betting on our careers on.
Right. I see. And hey, Microsoft having their backing, like you said, with that grant, I mean, that's huge, such a huge brand, and sure kind of validated your work, seeing their support.
Definitely.
So just a little bit more about the device itself. If one of you just wants to kind of explain like the dimensions, the specs, if you have that info, top of mind, and then just kind of how it works, like an example of a fan, let's say at a basketball game, for instance, and how they would use it.
Yeah, I can talk to specs. So the device itself is very similar to a laptop size. So we go about 2 inches thick by 11 and 8 inches on the length and the width dimensions. And so it ends up to be about 5 pounds in its current iteration. And something that's really important to us is we want to make sure that the device is as mobile as possible. So fans can take it with them from home to a game, to maybe a sports bar, watching with friends. And so with current improvements and iterations we're making on the device, we're bringing down the weight and bringing down the height of the device a bit to make it more mobile. And so for a fan experience, right now there's 2 ways they can enjoy that we really envision the device coming to life. And first is at a live sports game, because that's where a lot of the pain points we heard early on from fans is, one, if you're at a live game, there's often a delay with the radio broadcast, anywhere from 30 to 90 seconds delayed. And so by tapping into those live data feeds that Antyush was referencing earlier, we're able to translate those haptics with under a second delay. So a sighted fan may see the crack of the bat on the pitch, and a fan may hear that and they're feeling it on the device at the same time. And so the biggest piece of feedback we've heard from fans in the live environment is, wow, like I can follow the game in real time. I can cheer with everyone else in the stadium. I'm comprehending details of the play that just aren't necessarily accessible to me. And that's been super exciting to share with fans. So we've done a number of pilots and activations live, which has been really exciting. We went down to Kansas City with the Kansas City Chiefs last year in January. And we're able to do a proof of concept in their football stadium. We did a series of live activations with the Portland Trailblazers NBA team. We had 3 live games back to back, and we had fans from all across the area in Lower Washington, Vancouver, Washington, and came out from Portland as well. And at each stage, I think it's been able to prove to fans, prove to us, and prove to leagues and teams that this technology works. And not only does it work from a technical perspective, but it really does enhance the fan experience.
Exactly. So as far as the leagues, I know you guys kind of alluded to it earlier, but specifically the leagues that you have been working with so far, and maybe the leagues that you have your eyes on at this point.
Yeah. So as Bree mentioned, we did that initial proof of concept test with the Kansas City Chiefs using some NFL data. Then we have a relationship with the NBA. We were able to use their data to power an experience with the Portland Trailblazers. We then most recently activated with MLB at their All-Star Week, where the device was available at some Rangers games. They were available during the All-Star game, during the Futures game, where we were able to have fans from Texas come and try it out. And now we're kind of in the process of just going from these, single game or kind of single team focused activations to bringing it to as many stadiums, ballparks, and arenas as possible across those three major sports.
Gotcha. I see. Let's talk a little more about potentially the at-home usability of a device like this and kind of what that might look like in terms of, other technology, how that would kind of, get information from another source in terms of that data.
Yeah. So the great thing is that the data feeds that we're accessing, we can pull that data and convey it anywhere. The device could be at home, the device could be at the stadium, but from our back end, we're using that same data. And so the at-home experience actually has different challenges to it. When we're live, you want to be as quick as possible. You want it to be as live as possible, so that you're following the stadium experience. Whereas at home, we've heard from fans, a lot of folks really appreciate radio broadcast because there's a different level of detail that the announcers are able to provide. And that's going to have a different delay than the TV broadcast. And so one of the technical hurdles that our team is excited to work through right now is how do we sync the OneCourt experience up with whatever broadcast fans would like at home? Because believe it or not, the OneCourt device is going to be faster than, say, the TV or the radio broadcast. But I think the beauty of transitioning OneCourt to home is that it really continues to push the envelope on accessibility. Knowing that there are other barriers to going to the stadium that fans may experience at home, fans can watch, 1, 2, 3. Some fans that I speak to are listening to sports every day. And so the fact that this device, our OneCourt device, could be enhancing their experience on a daily basis, like that impact is astronomical. And so we're really excited to get to that point where we can be supporting fans at home. And so that's a big goal of ours that we're working towards for next year.
Right. That is really fascinating that, fans could actually get more or info faster, I should say, with this device compared to, say, the traditional methods. Mm-hmm. And Antyush, anything you'd like to add on that front?
No, I think Bree covered it all. I think we are just excited to, begin providing access in more ways. I think, initially we thought that we were going to be focusing on in-stadium experiences for a long time, several years before ever looking at a device for the home. But it's through feedback from community members and from even the leagues that have said, hey, I think the biggest opportunity here is for the device to live in people's homes.
Right, absolutely. And just personally, as a visually impaired sports fan, there certainly are transportation challenges getting to a stadium or arena, and then obviously just navigating if I am going like independently or meeting someone there. So like any kind of travel, there's certainly barriers to enjoying the action live. Obviously, that's my preference, but to be able to enjoy this device at home too, or anywhere, even like a sports bar, for instance, at a watch party, definitely a lot of cool applications.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Then in terms of feedback from blind and visually impaired folks that have tested the device or that you've, interacted with, anything else you'd like to mention on that front?
I think there's always so many cool stories that we've either heard from community members or that we've gotten to experience a lot of really cool interactions by conducting a lot of our user testing and by visiting different events and community organizations. There's one story that gets brought up often. There was some user testing that we were doing on our football product about a year ago. And one of the users who were trying it out here in the local Seattle area, she was trying out the device, and then as she was using it, she she kind of paused and said, "Hey, like, why am I feeling so many vibrations going up and down instead of side to side?" And we thought for a second, "Oh no, the device is broken. Uh, we did something wrong." And we checked it out. Everything was working correctly as it should have been. And in conversations with her, we realized that she had always imagined the field of play to be very kind of one dimensional on a timeline where a pass was made from, the 20-yard line to the 30-yard line. And it was just a straight motion. But what the device was showing for the first time was that there was a lot of lateral movement on a football field, and it was actually quite not just long, but also a lot wider than she had expected. That there was so much space being used on the field. And OneCourt was able to fill in that gap in the experience that while the radio was great at conveying a lot of detail, it wasn't communicating all of the spatial details that add so much to the game. So it's been a lot of conversations like that have really helped us understand where OneCourt fits into the fan experience. OneCourt's not here to replace the radio. We're here to add to it, and we're here to give fans a complimentary experience, because I think the best experience is where you have the radio, where you have maybe the OneCourt audio bites feature, and where you have the OneCourt haptics, because it's that way where you're able to experience every part of the game.
Exactly. Great points. I'm also curious about like Braille users. Is there any kind of correlation maybe that you've seen in interacting with folks if they mention that they do read Braille, that they could use a device like this, kind of pick up the learning curve a little more quickly? Or
yeah, it's a great point. I think we've certainly seen, there are some fans who might be better tactile readers than others, those who've been blind from a young age or have been blind since birth. But at the same time, those who have more recently lost their vision may have more context around the sport itself, what the field might look like, what the dimensions are, what a formation might be like. So I think, fans who have more experience with a sport, and those who maybe are also very used to kind of tactile reading, maybe through Braille or other tactile readers, may find the device easiest to use. But at the same time, we've placed a lot of emphasis on making the device something that is extremely intuitive for every fan. And it's very challenging because, as I'm sure you might want to expand on, Greg, like there's a huge spectrum across the blind and low vision community. So I think what we've seen in our testing, a great example being our Portland Trailblazers testing, is that we partnered with the Washington State School for the Blind. So there were children who came to use the device at the game. And I'll share, when the students first started to walk in, I got very nervous because I realized we had never tested the device with children before. We had only tested with adults. And I had no idea if they would understand what was happening, if they would like the device, if they had any experience with basketball. And there was one student who was 8 years old, and the device was maybe half of her size. And she would not let go of it. She was not interested in sharing. And she would carry it around everywhere. And she got it in seconds, if maybe minutes. She was cheering along with the rest of the crowd in the stadium, and could tell every time the Trailblazers scored. She would be upset every time the Trailblazers lost the ball and the other team had it, because she could feel the players running in the other direction. And she was also, combining that the feeling of the device with the context of how people were reacting in the crowd. So, I think the point of making the device intuitive, it's a really good one. It's really important for us, because every fan should be able to enjoy using the device the first time they use it. The first time you pay for a ticket to go to a game, you should have the same experience as everyone else, which is a fun experience where you have access to every detail that you want to have in that game.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just thought of another question here as you were talking there, in terms of like, accessing the device. I know you guys have talked about potentially, whether it's a stadium providing it or the fan themselves having the device. Any insight on that approach?
Yeah, Bree, I'm sure you can add more here. I can start us off.
Mm-hmm.
So we really see the stadiums are very important for a couple of reasons. First, it's, I think, the most inaccessible experience from what we've heard from the community, given that the radio tends to be so delayed in the stadium, given that it's, already challenging as an environment. Anything we can do in the stadium to make the experience better allows for people to really participate in a really fun and exciting social experience. The second thing with stadiums is that partnering with sports teams and leagues that have a lot of reach gives OneCourt a lot of exposure and a lot of credibility. That is really important for a startup of our size to be attached to those kinds of organizations. And third, on kind of the exposure piece, is that by partnering with a club and making devices available at the stadiums, it means that fans can go and try out the device and use it themselves. And if they enjoy it, then they might be more interested in using it in their home and getting one for themselves. So given that we are early stage and don't have thousands of these units, by having these devices in places that are easy to try out, it enables us to get a lot of feedback and gives fans the ability to access an experience that could be, a ways out for ordering for their home.
Gotcha. Bree, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about how we envision the experience going from a fan perspective. Our goal is, as we enter the NBA season, we'll be able to share with the community, with you who's on our wait list, and for the folks that are already signed up to gain access to info. We would let them know, OneCourt's going to be in these arenas with these teams in the upcoming season. And you can purchase your ticket and book out a device from guest services, and that it's going to be there ready and waiting for you. And we've talked about things like the know before you go, like what are the tips and tricks? What information can we give you ahead of time before going to the arena so that you're excited and prepared to be using the device? But really, as Antyush said, our goal is that you can go to guest services, pick up your device, place it on your lap when you get to your seat, and it's good to go. It's synced to the game. It's synced up live. You're going to be able to feel those haptics from the first tip-off in the basketball game or the first pitch in the baseball game. And then we want to hear from fans. Like, we're still very much rooted in feedback from our fan base. And so giving fans the chance to let us know, like, what part of that experience did you really enjoy? Like, how can we make that better? All the way from, buying that ticket to checking out the device to trying it in stadium, because we want to keep iterating on that and improving those experiences for fans.
Right. Very cool. So in terms of future plans for the device, for the technology, I know one question I do have is like, as far as like blind and visually impaired sports specifically, whether it's goalball, beep baseball, potentially engaging with some of these actual blind sports, that blind people do attend as fans as well. The Paralympics certainly comes to mind. Any discussion that you guys have had internally on that?
Yeah, a lot. To start right now, we're focused on kind of the sports that offer us the data to power the experience. So kind of the big major sports like, American football, basketball, baseball, soccer, even hockey. But we also see a lot of opportunity, as you mentioned, to support a lot of the blind sports. And we get a lot of asks about that. And I think what we're excited about is in the future, the device should be able to support a way for when there is no data, someone who is watching the game or someone who is at the event may be able to kind of create their own tracking data. And maybe that's using a tablet and drawing out what's happening on the device, or maybe that's someone else manually entering in the info. or eventually the data tracking infrastructure might even be available across all levels of the sport. I think it's only going to become more and more common. So, present day, those aren't events that we're currently supporting, but certainly in the future, it's something that we hope and expect that the device will be available for those.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Great to hear. It's definitely on your radar.
Mm-hmm. One thing, Greg, I want to add too is that I think as we've spoken to more and more folks in the blindness community, we've also realized that OneCourt applies beyond sport spectatorship. There's so much excitement and motivation around instruction and education. Even having folks come up to our booth whenever we're boothing in community and simply feeling the tactile board and feeling, what does a baseball diamond feel like? What does a basketball court feel like? And we've had a number of mobility specialists or teachers come up to us and say, hey, I would love this in my classroom. Like, I would love to use this as a device to teach a sport or to coach goalball or to coach, blind tennis and be able to use it as a educational tool. And so I think, using the underlying haptic technology, there's so many other applications beyond sports spectatorship that we're really excited about.
Yeah, that was another thought I had too, just about there's so many, the possibilities really are endless as far as the applications for this technology.
Mm-hmm.
So before we do wrap up here, as far as contact info, if folks want to connect with you, and then Bree, I know you mentioned wanting to just, put the call to action out there if people are interested in potentially testing the device at an activation coming up here.
Yeah. Well, the best way to learn more about OneCourt and to get in touch with us is our website. So it's onecourt.io. That's onecourt.io. We're also on Instagram, where we're constantly sharing what community activations we're going to be at next, and sharing stories of folks that have been trying the device. But as we gear up here, we're entering a really exciting time for our team because we're going to be announcing all of our activations for the upcoming sports seasons. And that's where, we really want to invite fans from the community to try the device live, to join us for activations. And so the best way to do that is by joining our wait list. And so folks can do that on our website, get in touch with us. We'll be sure to follow up. And what's been really helpful for us is folks that join our wait list, we give them the option to either fill out a sport accessibility survey or to schedule a call with our team where they spend, 15, 20 minutes just sharing with us what their experiences are. What are the pain points they have in their current sporting experience and how can OneCourt fill those? And that's been super valuable for us as we go through product development. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that the more and more fans we hear from, we hear what city they live in, what's their favorite team. We take all that information and we start to map out, across the country, where are fans excited about this technology and what cities can we go to next? And so by folks reaching out to us and also sharing OneCourt with their community, it helps us roll out the technology faster to more teams and leagues.
Excellent. Well, so much exciting stuff here coming down the pike.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, again, I want to thank Bree Fraser and Antyush Bollini here for joining us here on Eyes Free Sports. Just so excited about everything you guys are doing. And like I've told you guys many a time, anything I can do to help get the word out about your efforts in this technology, definitely honored to do so. So thanks again for taking the time to be on my podcast here.
Thanks for having us, Greg.
Absolutely. To hear more episodes of the Eyes Free Sports podcast and to subscribe, search for Eyes Free Sports on your favorite podcast platform or visit eyesfreesports.com. Be sure to follow the Eyes Free Sports podcast at facebook.com/eyesfreesports and on Twitter at Eyes Free Sports.